Oh, can you mute your line?
Oh, sorry about that. Here.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's get started right now. Hi, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 28. My name is Jay Oza, and I'm the host of the show. And today we have Julie Finkelstein, who is a mentor for the Coursera course called Introduction to Public Speaking. And also I'm a mentor too. So what we try to do on this show is like maybe five things, maybe six. One is purpose is to learn, teach, share, practice, support, and also the sixth one is kind of important too, trust. We have to have trust so that nobody feels like that that they're going to be ridiculed or made fun of for making any kind of mistakes, because let's face it, people have real fear of speaking. They just don't want to be rejected. On this show, nobody gets rejected. And look, we all have fear, and this is the only way to overcome it, by doing it. So that's just what we try to do. But we do something more than that. We don't just have people come on and talk about simple stuff. We talk about things that are kind of a little interesting and challenging, because that's where the stakes are higher, right? If you're having small talk, that many people are very good at, but the stakes are not that high. Here, what we do is we look at some real examples, speakers, and then discuss it. So part of it is to learn from that, and also to be able to discuss intelligently. And look, if you make mistake, you make mistake. You just come back next week and try to do it better next time. So some of it you can prepare, and some of it is just going to be kind of ad-libbing, because you can't really prepare when you're having a discussion. So I think this is a really good show. It has helped me a lot, and Julie can talk about how this show has helped her. And like I said, this is our 28th show, so we've gone through quite a few shows now where we have gotten more comfortable. In the beginning it was a little difficult, but now I think we're getting more comfortable doing this show, more comfortable in front of camera. So if you're watching this is how it works. In the beginning, you're going to be a little, it may not be that good, you may not like it, but just keep doing it. And you may not take 28 shows. Maybe we're not that good. Maybe you can do it in the next 3-4 shows, but still, you got to do it. You got to create that body of work. So today we're going to focus on billionaires, and it's for us to understand how these billionaires think. And part of thinking is speaking. And we're going to look at 3 famous tech billionaires. Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon. Then we'll look at Elon Musk, who has founded several companies, Tesla, SpaceX, SolarCity, and he used to be one of the founders of PayPal. And then we'll look at Larry Page, who is the founder, along with Sergey Brin, of Google. So listening to billionaires, you can learn a lot. First of all, how they speak. And you'll see 3 different styles here. Two of them are in an interview form. Musk and Page are being interviewed by, Musk is interviewed by Chris Anderson, and Page is interviewed by Charlie Rose. Jeff Bezos gives a speech at a commencement at Princeton. So these are 2 of them are interview. One of them is a speech in front of a large audience. But you get to learn a lot about how they speak, how passionate they are, and what we can learn from them. At least we may not be a billionaire when you look at our check account, but that doesn't mean we can't speak like a billionaire. So here's an opportunity for us to see what can we learn from listening to these 3 top billionaires that everybody knows about. So that's the show, and I'll turn it over to Julie to do a quick intro, and then we'll move on to our 3-minute speech segment. Julie?
Hi, Jay. Good morning. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jay. My name is Julie, and I do 2 things. I'm a fellow mentor in the Coursera's public speaking, and with that, I have notes from the videotape. And then right now, I'm taking on Jay's 3 in 30 challenge, which he'll talk to you more about. I'm making commentaries on some of the videos and plugging some of the holes. The other thing I do is I facilitate meetings that help us be more proactive in our lives and live our visions. With that, on Saturday mornings, I have a read and discussion program, which we're reading the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and we have times for discussion and introductions. In addition, on Wednesdays, I'm starting a Wednesday phone meeting, which is about follows the Napoleon Hill's idea of a mastermind, where we get together, share our vision and actions, and then also get peer suggestions and feedback. For more information, give me a call, and Jay will share my my email later. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, so I usually include Julie's email during her introduction. So, well, obviously, if you're watching it, you're going to be seeing the email. If you're watching this live, you will get it. But typically, when this is recorded, her email will appear when she's introducing herself. I always include her name, her role, and if there's anything else that I'm missing, Julie, let me know. I right now put you down as a mentor. If there's anything more that I need to put down, just let me know so I'm more accurate on some of the things that you're doing. And then I include her email below that. So let me just address something that Julie just mentioned, that she's taking on this 330 challenge. So simply the 330 challenge is, the 3 is for 3-minute speech, roughly 3, and 30 is 30 days. So initially, I thought this is one of the first things that somebody should do before taking the Coursera course on Introduction to Public Speaking, because that course is a 10-week course, which is an excellent course. By the way, that is one of the best courses that I've seen, and it's free. And I haven't come across any course that's better than that. And I urge everybody to take that. But then Julie and I think was Atul suggested that a better way would be, if somebody's just kind of new at public speaking, 330 may be too difficult, and I agree. And so 330 is something you want to really do after you finish the course, so that way you will have a very good baseline on where you are with your speaking. And what it does is that if you record 30 straight speeches in 30 days, believe me, you're going to get comfortable after 30 speeches. I think you can start getting comfortable pretty much after 15, maybe even 10. But once it becomes a habit, then giving a speech and recording in front of a camera is going to be a breeze. And nowadays, cameras are pervasive. They're everywhere. They're you can get a camera. They're on your PC, and they're even on your smartphone. So recording a 3-minute speech is not that burdensome like it used to be in the past. Today, it's simple. The question is, are you going to spend the time doing it? And in the beginning, it may take about an hour. That's what it took me. But now I think after doing 30, it takes me probably less than 30 minutes, probably 30 minutes. So now I've done 330. Julie's currently, I think, Julie, you're on probably several speeches you've already done in the 330 challenge. I think maybe close to 10. So Julie's already like close to one-fourth done with her 330 challenge. But then I said to myself after I finished it, what do I do now? So I call it now 330 plus, because it never ends. So once you finish 330, it's a habit that should continue. Otherwise, your skills may start eroding. So once you finish 330, you don't have to do it every day, but you should at least do it at least once every other day. And I call that the 330 plus. So it's not a challenge at that point. It's something that you don't need a challenge, since you already turned it into a habit. So at some point, Julie's going to finish her 330 challenge. Then I urge her to move into that next phase, which I think is an advanced phase, so that her skills do not start diminishing. They just gets better. And that will be the 330 plus phase. So at this point, I'm going to move into our 3-minute speech segment. And I'll take a quick break, and then we'll start it, okay? Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 28. This is our 3-minute speech segment that we do before we get into the heart of our program, doing segments and evaluating speeches. So today, I am going to talk about something that I observed, and it kind of floored me because I was just not expecting it, and I learned a lot. And I attended my son's school, and they have this fall sports awards. So they had like lots of children, high school students, and parents. And when the soccer team was introduced, the coach goes and introduces all the players. These were freshmen, these were sophomore, these were varsity letter winners, etc. And then it was over. And just like all the different coaches come on and talk about how well they did, what was the highlights, what they plan to do next year, typical of what you would see. So that's pretty routine. And then another coach came, and then afterwards that same soccer coach came back again. And I was like, why is he coming back? What did he like? Why is he coming back? And evidently he forgot one name. And the name that he forgot, he was not a player, but he was somebody who was on the team in some sort of as an assistant role. I mean, he's a student, but this particular student has some physical disabilities that prevents him from growing. And evidently the coach felt really bad about that he left out this one key player. And he was there, his parents were there. So the coach immediately gets on the mic when the other coach was finished. And the first thing he does is apologize. Well, the first thing he does is not apologize. First thing he said, he made a mistake. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing, he apologizes to the student, the name that he forgot when he was acknowledging all the other students. He did not acknowledge him. He apologized to his parents because they were there. And this is a big event. This is an awards night, right? This is a fall sports award. And he was on the stage. He got his bow, but his name didn't get mentioned. Then he apologized to the audience. And then he made that student whole again, saying that he got that special recognition that other kids didn't get because he made a mistake. And I thought about that, and I even went afterwards and told him, I said, listen, that was a very classy thing that you did, because you taught something to these kids more than they'll ever know, that when you do something wrong, you got to make it right away. You don't then think about like, okay, should I do it? What would I think? You did what was right. You made a mistake, and you didn't like, try to come up with excuses like, oh, I just forgot in this. You knew about it and you did it immediately, and let the consequence, whatever happens afterwards, let that happen. But your focus was on doing something right. And I said, I don't know if the kids learned that lesson, but this was one of the most important lessons that kids don't learn even when they get into their adulthood. They always look for excuses. If you do something wrong, there are three things you got to do. Admit you made a mistake. Second, apologize. And then how do you make that person whole again? And I said, I'm not sure whether the kids understood that, but that is one of the most important life lessons you just taught these kids that I hope they understood. And I said, you should be proud of yourself. And I said, they're lucky to have you as a coach, but more as a teacher, because you just taught them. I said, you didn't just teach them, you taught me that next time something like that happens, how to handle it. And I said, I didn't come to this event expecting to learn anything. And now I felt like I just got a life lesson from something that I just observed. And I said, I want to thank you for that. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to send a letter to the superintendent and the principal, letting them know that this was a very important lesson that was taught in real life situation that you just don't see anymore. And I was very impressed. So I just wanted to use that as part of my 3-minute speech segment. Julie?
Thanks, Jay. That was very powerful speech. Yeah, I like the idea of admitting the mistake, apologizing, and making whole. Thank you. Now I learned that again. So you're spreading the power of that. So I'll start my speech. So hello, fellow speakers and Jay. And today I want to talk a little bit about what I have called it and talked about here. It's a success life cycle model. That's what I'm calling it today. Most people, when they have a plan, when they have an idea, the first thing they do is they pull out the business plan. And to me, that's very frustrating because looking at it, you're supposed to know so much. I think that in looking at the business plan, that's actually like already the fourth step in this model. So the way I have it, and I'll use the example of the pro forma financial statement. So in order for you to get funding, you need a pro forma financial statement. And when you first start, that's really too hard. So the first stage of this for me is called envisioning. And at that point, I will go back and fill this out. But what I think you need to do is a pre-forma statement. I'll go back and fill that in. And the second step is experimenting. In the experimentation phase, you actually do little scenarios, go out and talk to people. But the goal here is not to prove you're right or wrong, but just to gather information and to identify potential opportunities. So the object of experimentation is reality, surfacing reality. The next stage is piloting, and that's where you have proof of concept. At that point, you've gathered through your initial experimentation, you have a list of ideas you think that works, you have potential opportunities, so you want to put that together as a project plan, and you want to test that out. So it's a validation of your ideas and your plan. It's a small model of what you want to do, but the model has to be complete and scalable. So finally, you do rollout, and that's where you have a completed pro forma statement. And we know the pro forma statement is the financial statement you use to get funding. So there are various deliverables and purposes for each of these steps. So for example, in envisioning, you have a financial statement already, but at that point, all you want to put down is very, whatever comes to your mind. So for example, I'm working with this guy, he wants to be a coach, and all he knows at this point is he wants to make $50,000 plus net revenue, okay? So in experimentation phase, what I would suggest he does is to put down some metrics. So every client, for example, 2 hours, he needs to charge $200 an hour, and then that will give him metrics of how many clients he needs to have to generate that $50,000 revenue. So that's just a scenario. Then he can go out and test that. Are my hypothesis correct? So and then maybe he finds out that he can't really do coaching, but he could be a business consultant. And then every client he will get, instead of 2 hours a week, he'll get 20 hours a week. And so the idea is everything could shift here. As Jay would say, things could pivot at that point. But it's low cost because you don't have anything rolled out. And then in pilot, then you actually say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I think works, and you prove that. So in this case, you have a completed pro forma statement with all the line items, but at this point, you're not sure if that's what you want to go out for fundraising. At this point, you want to talk to your coach, and you say, this is my pro forma statement. Will I be able to get the money I want? So that's the validation and the proof of concept. So you don't go to someone and someone look at your pro forma and say, this guy's not mature enough yet. So also the processes here, whatever you do, it has to be scalable to your full production. So finally, with all this stuff together, you have plenty of time to really know what you're doing. You can roll out the full-scale project. And then the final phase is feed and caring of your success, which is maintenance. And Stephen Covey will call that sharpening the saw. So in summary, there is 5 stages: envisioning, having a seed, The second stage is growing the seed, experimenting and making the seed real. Third is making the seed alive and can grow into a tree, pilot and validation, and roll out, growing the tree fully, and then caring and feeding of the tree. So thank you. That's my speech.
Oh, that's excellent. And Julie, can I ask you a question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so this is for, like, if you want to, like, what would you use this for? This particular method, this 5-stage method that you just described: envisioning, experimenting, piloting, rolling out, and then caring, I think was the last one.
Yes, feeding and caring. Usually it's called maintenance because actually if you look at the company's budget, I'll just take a segment of it and I'll answer your question. If you look at the IT budget, 80% of the budget goes to feeding and caring in the maintenance. So you need to use that 20% for all these new possibilities very carefully.
Mm.
In terms of the size of project, I think it can be just something you do very small. Let's say today you want to go out shopping. You can apply this process. And it can scale up to a company vision, and it can be collaborative. So the next stage in my process is defining the deliverables and the activities for the deliverables for each of these steps.
So like a project management phases.
Yes, except that by the time you have a project, that's a small segment of this whole life cycle. This is a much broader life cycle view.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're basically taking the ideas from PM and applying it to how you can apply it to anything.
Yeah, actually, it's more like an object orientation because if you look at any object, it has an existence lifelong. Every object in this universe has a life cycle. There's an initiation, maturation, a sustenance, and an ending.
Right.
So it's really those 4 life cycles, and I'm applying it to success.
Right, because I had, if you remember that when we discussed the speaking athlete, I had come up with not these, but I can see what this is for. That was just specifically for public speaking because I took from what athletes do, right? And I said the first one was preparation. Second one, I think, was performance. The third one was evaluation. And then the fourth one was assessment. So I'm sorry, the first one, yeah, I think, not the preparation, sorry. The first one was not preparation. First one was learning and training, I think. That's right. The second one was preparation because preparation is for a specific event that you're preparing for. Then you would perform at the event. Then you do a quick, immediate evaluation after you complete it.
Oh,
and then at some point you need to do an assessment to see where you are and what you need to do to get better. So those were the 5 phases that we had discussed. So This looks like it's something similar. The only thing I would suggest is when you use word like pro forma, you want to be careful because some people will immediately tune out because they might say, oh my God, this is something I don't understand. So you may want to be careful there. If the people are financially savvy, then the pro forma word is not going to scare them. But if somebody that, like, I don't know, I heard of the word pro forma, but I'm not sure what that really means. And people will be, yeah.
The whole point is if you want to do a business plan and you want to go forward, you have to do a pro forma. Okay, so my whole point is that you can't start off the process with doing a pro forma.
Right.
Maybe I should say something like, as pro forma can be very scary, but this process will get you into it easily.
Yeah, right. The only thing I'm saying is that you can't, whenever you introduce a word that is very specific to some particular area and you're applying it to another area, the burden is on you to make it clear that think of pro forma as these are the things you're going to have to do, like that. So they now know what pro forma is, right? That these are the things you need to do in order to get to the next step that's required in order to succeed. So we call that pro forma. but you don't need to be a financial. So that way they don't feel like, oh my God, oh, this is pro forma. What? Because that's a scary word, actually, when you say pro forma. It's a Latin word, right?
I don't know,
It's a
but I
pro
take your
forma.
word
It's a
for
Latin
it.
word. So once you start bringing Latin into it, it makes you look smarter. But I don't know if that makes your. I just wanted to let you know that you want to be careful there. That if you're
Yeah, I
going to use words
appreciate
like
that.
that's the only thing. Otherwise, I think I like the idea. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's take a brief pause, and we'll go on to our first segment. Okay. Welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 28. My name is Jay Oza, and we are going to our first segment. And in this particular segment, or the next two segments, all three segments, we're going to look at the billionaires, tech billionaires, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Larry Page when they appeared at the TED event. So these are all their TED Talks that I was able to find. And we're going to use them to see how a billionaire speaks, how he thinks, how he communicates, how he gets his message across. So we can, well, it's not going to make us a billionaire, but at least we know how to talk like one, at least if we have to talk to some important people. So the first one we're looking at is Jeff Bezos. And the speech that I included is the one that he gives at a commencement address at Princeton University. And I think out of all the three speakers, this one was the best speech. And I think it's a little unfair because he's giving a speech. The other two, Musk and Page, were actually being interviewed. So this is a formal speech. The other two are more like an impromptu speeches. They're basically answering questions that's given to them by, in Musk's case, was Chris Anderson, who's the founder of TED, or he runs TED now. And the other one was by Charlie Rose. So let's focus on Jeff Bezos. Of course, Jeff Bezos is the founder of Amazon. And his net worth, I just looked at it, is something like close to 50, something like 60 billion now. So this guy's pretty rich. Okay. There are a lot of zeros at the end of his bank account. And I like the way he gives the speech. He's trying to give some lessons to the students at Princeton University who are graduating. And the way he speaks is very deliberate. He's not rushing his speech in any way. And he starts off with this story when he was 10 years old. And he's with his grandparents, and he makes some clever remark about his grandmother smoking, and he figures this out in his head. And he was like so impressed, like, hey, grandma, that you're going to cut your life by so many years. And the grandma was like, oh my God, yes. And she started crying. And then he talks about how his grandfather pulls the car over and tells him that, gives him this advice, says, Jeff, it's harder to be kind than clever. And then he goes into the meat of his speech. So he starts the speech out with this story. And I just like the way he tells the story. He tells it in a way that you find like, wow, I want to know what happened here. And he's like telling like, oh, I thought I did something so clever. But then he gets this life lesson from his grandfather that in life, sometimes it's better to be kind than clever. And then he kind of switches that and provides a lesson to where the main part of his speech is between gifts and choices. So he was given this gift of being clever, but he made the wrong choice by not being kind. Kindness is like choice you make, right? And he's telling these students that they have tremendous gifts, otherwise they wouldn't have gotten into Princeton. But the question is, what are the choices you're going to make? And then he goes through his life and he talks about, Jeff Bezos graduated from Princeton University. I think he got a degree in computer science and electrical engineering, and he was a summa cum laude. So the guy was really smart. He went to one of the most prestigious universities, and he finished among the top students. and he went to Wall Street, and then he had to make a choice once after he got married. I think it was around, he said he was about close to 30 years old, whether he should go, and he saw the growth. Somehow he had access and he saw that the internet was growing at something like 2,300%, which is unheard of. And he said, there's got to be something that he can do to, when something is growing, that can add value to people. And he basically quit his job and he started this company called Amazon to sell books over the internet. And of course, the rest is history. So the thing that I like about this, listening to him, so he's a billionaire, right? So what do we learn from his speaking style and then how he thinks? The speaking style with Jeff Bezos is that he's very clear. Everything he says in the speech, you understand. There's nothing in the speech that you say, well, I don't understand what he's saying here. He's very clear, very right to the point. There is nothing, there's no throwaway lines or anything. He uses nice dramatic effects to get his point across when he was young. All of these things, he's done it in a masterful way. And you can see that communication to him is very important. Even though he's reading the speech, but the effects is still there. He's not just reading it like a drone. He's putting in a lot of style. There's a lot of passion in that. And then the way he's speaking is like, you kids, you're listening to somebody that you can learn from. That's his, like, kind of his attitude here. And also the thing that I like about his speech is the way he uses pauses. He doesn't try to rush through anything. He's like, I have a message and I'm going to get this message across to you in a way that you're going to remember it for the rest of your life. That's how I perceived it when I viewed the speech. The other thing is the mindset of a billionaire. And that's the part that always interests me, that I want to know what makes this person tick. And what makes Jeff Bezos tick is that he's a thinker. He's thinking about all these things. That's what I want to know. Like, how is he thinking? And he gives them so many things like to think about that tells you that this is how he views the world. This is how he makes decisions when he says, you know, are you going to follow dogma or are you going to try to be original? And he goes through like litany of things that he's telling these people, you know, are you going to play it safe? Are you going to take risk, et cetera, et cetera. And then he basically said in his life, he had an opportunity to play it safe and he didn't. And he said that you're going to run into that at some point in life, you're going to have that opportunity where you can play it safe or you're going to take a risk. And I like the way he ends the speech. And he said, in the end, we are our choices. Build yourself a great story. And I mean, that is so perfect that it's similar to what Steve Jobs said in his commencement address, right? That you can't connect the dots. The dots, they connect afterwards. And he's saying is, make your choices. You know, you are what the choices you make. And then at the end, even if they don't work out, you're creating your own story. That's unique to you. And that's what life is all about. So I thought this was a very effective speech. And I would highly recommend people view it for a number of reasons. One is you get to see how a billionaire thinks and how he's able to take that thought and communicate it in a clear, concise, and an impactful way. And you kind of get to understand that that's the kind of mindset you need to be successful. So I thought I learned a lot from watching this speech. Julie?
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I think this is I really appreciate the theme for this talk and next week's. Considering we're at the end of the year and we're doing, I am doing several Vision Quest activities. One of them is I'm meeting with 3 of my friends online, and we're doing a vision project, a Vision Quest. So what I think the most important for all 3 of them is that they think big, and they take risk, and they care. Bezos' speech was, I think, the most emotional, has the greatest of emotional tone, And I think that is because of he started off with such a personal story about, and he uses emotional words like adored, and it was such a joyful time for him. And I appreciate what you said too, that he started saying the dogma of being original, be safe or take risk, or be kind or be clever. Those are the three matrices of choices. And he went on to say he took risks. And also at the end, when you're 80 years old, you are your choices. I can relate to that because when my son graduated from college, he had this giant vision. He wanted to go to Shanghai and be a big business person. He did not succeed. He used up a lot of the money we saved up for him for his launching pad. But I think it, like you said about Steve's job, we don't know where the dots are going to connect it. And then he decided he wanted to be a fashion designer, and then he wanted to be in the fashion business, and so he went through a lot of steps at the tender age of 29, and now he moved to New York, and he became in the finance sector, Morgan Stanley, and now he's working with REIT. So I think somehow, I think I did something right. He is definitely taking risks, and I appreciate the stories. It makes me feel like you're helping me to feel like a more peaceful mother, because I cannot connect the dots, and I have to have faith, and I'm glad he's taking risks. So very good speech. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, that's a nice story. I think the part that I like about what he says, I think, is something that I try to make sure, because we're Asian parents, we want our kids to do well, but sometimes it's not what we want, it's what they want, right? And sometimes you just have to give this type of an advice, because sometimes we limit our children's choices. I did not do that with my daughter. My daughter is currently working at a company called Mashable, and she could have gone into, I knew early on she was not cut out for medicine or engineering or even computer science. So I didn't even bother pushing her. I said, listen, whatever you want, but be the best in whatever you want. Go all out. If you pick something, like she went into communications, I said, if you want to go into communications and PR, then be the best in that. And then when she graduated this year, she kind of got a runaround trying to get a job in the PR. So I said at that point, you need to pivot and get something, and maybe something else will come up. I said, maybe you need to look at sales, maybe something else. And then she landed this job. She had two offers, and she took this one at Mashable, and she likes it there. So I said, sometimes you can come out of college thinking, I'm going to do this, but then it may not work out. When you go into real life and try to test it, you find out that that's not what you wanted, is not what you're going to get. And then at that point, you have to really make a decision. What do you do? And now she really likes it at this company. And in fact, she was telling me that she's just finished more than 3 months now, and she's pretty happy there. So I said, yeah, just keep doing it. You never know. Don't fall into this thing that I have to be this because I got my degree in this. Don't let the degree define. Because I got my degree in electrical engineering, and I never got a single job where I actually ever had to work with circuitry or anything like that. I never did that. I was more interested in computers, software. So that's a thing that we do have to remember, is that at the end, you have to, like, you worked for many years, Julie. So if you had to build a story, that's your story. That's unique to you. You can go right from your story coming from Hong Kong or from China and work your way up to starting several companies and now to the current state. And in fact, I did that recently, not my history of what I did, but I'm currently, as you know, writing a book. And one of the chapters that I just finished was my speaker's journey. And it kind of starts right from my schooling in India to the present. and I talk about like the highlights, the lowlights of all the different places where I really realized that I needed to improve my. At some point, I didn't even know I had to improve because I didn't know any better. And then some of the embarrassment that I had to go through in order to realize that I had to really. So that became my story. So I can relate to what he's saying here. Build your own story. Build yourself a great story. And in my case, it is a true story that, as far as my speaker's journey is concerned. And I like that advice that at the end we are our choices, and some of those choices I made, some of the choices I stumbled into, but at the end, that is my story. And I think as a person we have to do it, and as a parent it's important that we do the same thing with our children, that they have to. You can help them, guide them in making decisions, but it's their choices that they have to make, and it's their story. You don't own that; they own it. Any closing thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Very wise. I appreciate that.
At this point, we'll move on to our next segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode 28. My name is Jay Oza, and the theme of this week is looking at tech billionaires. And in the second segment, we're going to look at an interview that Elon Musk does at the TED event with Chris Anderson. So Elon Musk is a very interesting person. And this is a Q&A form where he's answering questions. And you can tell the passion just oozes out of when he's talking about different things. And what makes Elon Musk so interesting, not to me, to everybody, is that he has taken different industries. He started out in the e-commerce space, right, with PayPal. Then once that company was sold, he took the fortune that he made, I don't know, several $100 million, and he started a company called SpaceX. That's it, rockets go to space, preferably Mars. Then he started another company called Tesla that's making these electric cars that everybody raves about. And then also he is built another company called SolarCity to bring solar power. So there is a common theme when you look at Elon Musk, especially the three companies that he started after he sold PayPal. It has to do with reusability. Everything is about sustainability and reusability. There's that common theme there. And he's looking at it like, how do I make something that's already there, make it better, that nobody's even bothered to think about? So when it comes to Tesla, it's not just that he's building these great cars, that's there. But there's something else that really he's doing is, how do we save, it's an energy, it's like, how do we use energy more efficiently? And cars consume a lot of carbons, right? Hydrocarbons. I think it's very expensive. We use a lot of fuel. There's a lot of carbon that's emitted. And his main mission there is that, how do I reduce it? To reduce it, he needs to make these electric cars very popular. And he describes that right now it's unaffordable. They cost, I don't know, quite a bit, probably over 50,000. I don't know, maybe 100,000. That's the first phase. Then he says second phase, it'll come down to, and then at the third phase, then it becomes mass market, and that's what he's trying to get to. So he said when and the other thing I think he talks about here is how we use up. It's not just energy; it's also space. The world is going to keep getting crowded, especially cities. And if the cars can be electric, and especially if they could be driverless, then just imagine how much space we could eliminate, right? So he's thinking in a different way altogether. It's not that he's just, if you simplistically, you can say, yes, that he's building a car. But that's not, like Julie mentioned, this is a concept of thinking big. He's thinking much beyond that, right? He's already 2-3 layers above what ordinary people think. We all think like, oh, he's just building these fantastic cars, but he's doing much more than that. He's solving some of the biggest problem with the car. Car is just a vehicle, if I may use the pun, to solve some bigger problems that he wants to solve. That's his mission when it comes to Tesla, when it comes to SolarCity, and when it comes to even SpaceX. SpaceX is launching rockets and exploring space, right? Sending his goal there is always to think big, is to send people to Mars to kind of not colonize it, but so that people can actually travel to Mars. And there you have to solve some big problems. The current way of doing it, there's a lot of, it's not reusable. The rockets cannot be reused. And he was explaining how much that costs. If you can reuse the rocket, then it's possible for you to go to Mars, and it's affordable. So he kind of combines many different things, but at the end, just like Jeff Bezos, how can a customer benefit from this, right? He's doing all these things, but at the end, if you can't do it, then what's the point of it? So like right now, many of us can't afford his cars, but at some point, that's what he wants, for us to be able to afford his car. And if everybody can afford it, then he can solve his bigger problem, right? Because if we're able to buy a Tesla, that means we're not driving a car that requires gas. So he wins that way, right? And everybody wins. So his point is not that he wins. He's going to do well no matter what. But he wants, as part of his legacy, he wants the whole, while he's here, he wants the planet to do well. So they think in a totally different way. That's why I like this speech. And here he has examples of like how he combines his vision, his knowledge, his talent, and his business acumen into realize his overall vision. So as far as his speaking is concerned, I think he could have been simpler at some point. At some point, I kind of got lost. I had to look at the transcript. So I'm not sure if I had heard it live, I would have picked up some of the things, because he just got a little too techie when he was explaining some of the percentage. When people start throwing out statistics and stuff, it's kind of hard to follow. With Jeff Bezos' speech, there were no statistics given. In fact, it was the statistics that got him into trouble in the first place when he started doing math. This speech, in some cases, when it was talking about Tesla, he got into like 60% is wasted and then 20% is wasted. I think that just goes to show like how much he knows about this topic and how much research that he has done in all of these different areas, such as cars, solar power, and also spaceships, rockets. So I was again, part of it was how he addresses these questions in a Q&A, like an impromptu, and he does it very well with like 1, 2 like that. He gets to the point right away. Second is you get to understand how he thinks and what makes him tick. And I thought we got that pretty clearly. And the guy who interviewed him did an excellent job, really challenged him to really get into his mindset. And I like what he said at the end on how he thinks counterintuitively, like physics, how science is so important in his thinking, not just analogy, just make it a little better. He wants to make it a lot better. That requires a different type of thinking. And when you are like Elon Musk, I like what he says at the end about negative feedback, that he values negative feedback because that means he solicits it, as he says it. I solicit negative feedback, not as a way of like, oh, how dare you shoot down my argument. So I learned that. So from a speaking point of view, that's something that we try to do on the show, where we will not give people any kind of feedback unless it's solicited. So if Julie asks me, Jay, what can I do better with my speech? Is there anything here that you see that I could have done better? And that's what you need in order to get better. If you're afraid to do that, then you're not going to get better. So part of fear is, do you want to get better? Fear of getting better. And what he wants to do is he wants to get better. He wants to make sure that his vision is right. He wants to get challenged, whether he's on the right track, and he wants to hear things that people are not sure of. And I think that was very valuable. Even if you take that one simple advice, I think you can do so much better. Julie?
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, so first of all, I do want to say I welcome feedback from you anytime, whether it's negative or positive. And I would prefer it to be constructive, but it doesn't have to be now that I've seen the speech. So first of all, I agree with you that the speech was very interesting. I really did not pay too much attention to the statistics. So there was a couple of things that interesting. One of it is the scope of his vision. He's looking at the word he used in there was humanity. So whereas Bezos' speech was about focusing on the individual because it was a graduation speech, Elon Musk was clearly like looking at what humanity, where will humanity be? And so that was all inspiring. And he did talk about, the other word that he used a lot was interplanetary. So he does have a vision of human beings going beyond Earth. I mean, to me, as myself, I think I have pretty big vision, which very little piece get done, but I really appreciate his vision. There was a point where he was talking about the solar panel. Well, there was a couple points that I think he wasn't completely forthcoming. One of it was when he used the example that he said this electric car can get so many mileage. And then the speaker said, well, this guy is right here, and he's driving at 18 miles an hour. So I think Musk was not completely candid. That's how I feel. So at that point, he broke the sense of trust I have for him. The other place that was also a little bit of a break in trust was when they were talking about the solar panels. And he was providing the value proposition. And the speaker said, and what's your take? And he never answered that question. I would prefer that he was a little bit more forthcoming. In terms of his last point, I thought that was really important, is you covered it already, is about how to come up with quantumly different levels of solutions. And what he said was, look at physics. And the way I interpret that was, and he may have said it, is to go back to the fundamentals, look at the fundamental laws. So in this case, he was using physical laws, but I believe there's basic human laws too of emotion and psychology. So whenever we want to be like explosively creative, we need to go dig deeper inside and look at the fundamentals again, which kind of segues me into the next speech, looking at deep mind. Overall, awe-inspiring because of the scope of his vision, which was on the whole humanity. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was good. There's a few things I want to add here, and all of those. Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think because one of the things I'm asking myself is why did he do a Q&A instead of just giving a talk? So I'm not sure about that. I don't know if it's just that he's uncomfortable with that format, or he doesn't like giving speeches. Because I was kind of a little puzzled. Like, these guys have given a lot of speeches at a TED event. Why not just give a speech? Or maybe he's more comfortable in a Q&A format. I don't know. Maybe that's the way they arranged it, because it doesn't make sense, because that's not typical TED format, what he just did at the TED event. The other thing is, I definitely agree with what he said about this system level of thinking, that if you want to make a quantum leap, like he talks about it, and this may be something we should talk about at a separate discussion topic, but I'll just briefly mention it, that he talks about the way he thinks and the way we typically, the one by analogy, and his is to break something down to its fundamental truths. And I was thinking about this, and I said, that's something we also need to do about speaking, because a lot of times we take a speech, we look at speech that has already been given, and we see how much we can make it better. Like, here, take a look at Martin Luther King, take a look at John F. Kennedy, take a look at this, and this is how you have to speak. And that's through analogy, I think. We're saying, okay, here's a speech, see if you can do it like that. And one of the things that I thought about after watching this speech is that something that I had already discussed, and I'm not saying I'm at Elon Musk level here, but this whole lean speech concept is sort of like that, right? Where we breaking it down to a single word and then building it up from there to build a speech, rather than here's a speech, this is similar to what this person has given, see if you can make it something similar to that. That's by analogy. And I'm not sure, maybe you can see if this makes any sense to you. What I'm saying is that don't do a speech like that. Do it from the bottom. And that's kind of what he's doing here. He's taking every field and he's starting from the bottom, and he's not accepting anything. He's saying, I need to know the basics at everything, because some of those truths, and then build it up from there. And that's how he's able to make these quantum leaps, because we tend to have accepted so many things that we don't even bother with it, that maybe some of those things may not even be 100% correct, or nobody's ever tried to challenge some of those things. And that's what I like about what he's doing with his type of thinking. The one thing I'll say is that he doesn't have a good sense of humor. And also, he should have given an attribution to this when he said, why did he go into space? And he said, well, that you start with large and then it becomes small. That quote really is what he's saying is what something that Warren Buffett once said, that why not by like how to become a millionaire. And Warren Buffett said, well, you start with $1 billion and you buy an airline so that you'll become a millionaire, and that's essentially what he's saying here. But it would have been good if he had given that attribution to say that, I'd like to take some of what Warren Buffett said about starting an airline, that, start with $1 billion. So that's what I'm trying to prove here, that if I'm trying to become a millionaire, he could have been more funny that way. But as you can see, that's not his thing. So, you can't fault him on that. But I just wanted to point that out, that humor is something that you have to be careful, and also you should have rehearsed it. I'm sure that question's been asked to him many times, and he should have nailed it. And I was I just wanted to point that out. Not that it diminishes his speech in any way, but as you can see, he works on thinking, but he needs to work also on his humor part a little bit more. Julie, any closing thoughts? No, you muted your line.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't expect these guys to be funny, so I didn't pick that up. But now you're funny.
No, I think humor is something, and this is outside. I think when you are a CEO, when you have something important to talk about, humor is very important, because that's how you can get your message across. I thought Bezos was kind of humorous. And I think humor is very important when you're doing things that are, he was I don't want to fault him at his attempt at a humor. When the guy asked him about why did he go into space, and he said, I'm trying to, he didn't use the word billionaire to a millionaire, but that joke has been there for a while. Okay, that's not something that he just created. Warren Buffett has been using that for a long time, that about airline industry. And I think that's pretty funny, because airline industries typically lose money. So you start with $1 billion. And I think Richard Branson even uses that. So when you use it, give the attribution. Don't, like we talked about that, give the attribution if it's not yours. And this is something I'm sure he's been using it quite a bit. So I thought overall, just to close this out, I thought that you got to see a mindset of a person who's driven, who has a vision, and who has like a methodology. So there's a lot of things here in this speech that shows to people, like if somebody's watching this and saying like, what do I get out of this? Okay, he's Elon Musk. I'm not like Elon Musk. And I think that's a wrong way of looking at it. I think we could all be like Elon Musk. And that's the whole point, that these billionaires are very successful because they do things in some very unique way. And is that just unique to them? I don't think so. I just think that unless we're willing to go through what they go through and trying to look at the world the way they look at it and have a vision, I think you can all be successful. Whether that's going to lead to, the measurement is not how many zeros you have after your account, The measure is what kind of impact you're making. And I mean, you and me are kind of trying to make that kind of an impact, you know? I mean, are we in the Elon Musk? Who knows? That's how it starts, right? At some point, we are trying to make impact in the way people develop their confidence, reduce their fear. And if you can do that, then you can achieve just about anything. And that's the kind of impact that we want to make. And that's the kind of impact that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Larry Page are trying to make. So impact is defined by you. It doesn't get defined by how big your net worth is. So I just want to make that clear, that we can all think like these billionaires and speak like these billionaires, but that shouldn't be defined. I think these guys would be doing it even if they weren't billionaires, because that's how driven they are. Any closing thoughts, Julie, before we move on to our next segment?
I agree. Thank you. Yeah, very much so.
Okay, we'll move on to our next segment. Thanks a lot. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode 28. My name is Jay Oza, and we're going to move to segment number 3. And this week's theme is looking at the TED Talks of some of the famous tech billionaires. We've looked at Jeff Bezos, we looked at Elon Musk. In this particular segment, we're going to look at Larry Page, who is a founder of Google with Sergey Brin. And in this particular talk, he's being interviewed by this famous journalist named Charlie Rose. So obviously, Larry Page is a pretty wealthy guy, probably worth more than $50 billion. And again, evidently he suffers from some kind of, he had some kind of vocal cord surgery or something. So his voice is kind of hoarse. And in a way, it kind of works in this, because it makes him, I don't know whether this is the way he is, but probably he is, but just the voice alone makes him really connect, because he can't speak loud because he had to get some kind of surgery, I believe. But it makes you want to listen to him, because this guy, he's very successful, and his demeanor is very low key. He's not trying to, he's basically saying, look, this is what I do. I want to, again, his vision is on how, one of the mission for Google was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So they've had this vision from the beginning, and they've kind of stuck to it. But they haven't stopped there. And that's what really fascinates me about these billionaires, that when you're not a billionaire, you always tend to say oh, why are you working so hard? You already made your money. You should just rest now. You can just do so many other things. And that's not how they think. For them, that's not what they're all about. They're all about trying to challenge themselves. The money is there, so that means they don't have to worry about that one aspect of it. But that means that because that part is removed, it gives them more of an opportunity to focus on things that really impacts lives. And that's how they use their money. So they're not looking at it saying, oh, today, let's see, I made $10 billion. So yesterday I lost $10 billion. That's not how they view the world. Because like I said, how much money do you need? They got more money than God probably at this point. But the problems are still massive. And as he's talking about something that looked kind of simple, that's so difficult for machines, is recognizing people, how machines play games. And you can see the passion, like when you watch it, you think wow, machines are having all this difficulty doing things that we take it for granted, like playing video games. And he's so into it. This is, look at the progress we're making, even though it doesn't look big, but this is the future. And some of it is somewhat scary too, because machines are going to play more and more important role. And Google is at the forefront of it. In some ways, it's going to be very helpful. In some ways, we don't know what it's going to do as far as employment and all that is concerned. And those are some of the challenges that many of these billionaires also have to think about that, yes, these advances are good. I think they're driven that they're not even looking at it, some of the negative aspects of advancement and how does that work? Like, how do we, when you leave people behind? But he's not focused, he's looking at what are the benefits. And in one a little a video that he shows about this man in Africa, how he was able to get information from Google and make his life better, and then how they're able to bring internet access using balloons. So what he's trying to do is that let information get to people and let them determine what happens to. He's not worrying about the consequences. That if you make information available, people will use it for good, and at the end, good will overcome potential bad that's out there that we see with some of the things that are going on in the world with terrorism and all that. But these guys are just focusing on the good of technology, but they don't seem to really focus on some of the negative aspect of technology either. And I'm not sure that they may care, but I'm not sure that that's what they really focus on, because their focus is on how to take the technology to the next level and improve people's lives according to them. So I think from a speech perspective, I think he connected because of the way he just talks and the passion that he shows, that there's so many massive problems that still need to be solved. And with technology, with him, technology is the way to solve it, right? And again, you want to understand the mindset of these billionaires, what makes them think. And we looked at Elon Musk, what makes him think, that whole system level of thinking, getting down to the fundamental truths, and then make this quantum leap. Here, Larry Page talks about invention and then innovation, and then how does that make people's life better. So he's kind of combining, like, you take it from invention to innovation, but then it has to scale. So in a way, it's kind of similar to all these three guys are scaling whatever they've developed. Jeff Bezos, scale, with his e-commerce site, Amazon.com, or his cloud computing site, AWS. Same thing with Elon Musk is trying to do. Everything has to scale, because if it doesn't come down to each of us benefiting, then that's not what they're looking for. At the end, it has to benefit each of us individually. So I like what he had to say here, and I like the way he says it. And I thought he did a good job, very good job. Julie, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. So you mentioned this, that Larry Page was sharing his mission, and I thought that was a pretty amazing vision. Organize the world information, make it accessible and useful. And I agree with you that he's very passionate, and the speech became very personal when he talked about his own problem with his voice, and that he talked to his partner Sergey, and even with his problems, he came out in public. I would imagine he's much more of a private person. In looking at this, in his vision, I think he really was very brave in his in the way he made a decision to China. It was because of his stance of being public that China banned Google altogether. I don't know what the issue is, but when he talked about search and privacy, the amount of data, he says that his path is to make the information available, and then people has to make the choice. And he talks about the baby and the bathwater. And the deep mind, he talks about the deep mind and showing its capacities for intelligence. And he mentioned that the developer is both a cybernetic expert, a computer science expert, and a neuroscientist. I have deep concerns about the direction of the computers, because of the human beings are not wise. I've been with several Zen centers, and each of them has its own personal scandals and problems. And it concerns me when he talks about the deep mind that one person's mind or a very select number of people's mind is scaled across the whole fabric of the information system across the world. He made a sense that make the choice public, and then people can choose. I think what it's coming down to is that we have to be information literate. If we're able to make those choices, not from emotion or fear or over optimism, we have to be informed consumers of information. And he did mention this issue about the Snowden and privacy, and he says the governments should be more open. I agree that governments should be more open, but what if they're not? And I think, what if Google is not, or Elon Musk is not? And how can we really count on every one of them being completely open? So in one point he mentioned, just let us know the parameters. And I'm not sure the governments will do that in terms of the parameters of what security means and not the specifics. Because anybody who's smart can go from the parameters into the specifics. So Larry Page's presentation as a presentation was very deep and cogent, but for me, it raises a lot of issues, just in terms of his positioning, his invention, which is information, if it's accessible, it's useful. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and let the people choose. There's a lot of underlying things. How can people choose if they're not on the same page, if they're not equally informed or knowledgeable? It makes me sound like a Luddite, but there's a lot of issues to be addressed.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of this talk, is to get us to start thinking about some of these some of these issues. And I think one of the things he says about is that Google is quite wealthy, right? I mean, he's worth probably over $50 billion, and then people at Google are very, very wealthy. But Google makes up a very tiny percentage of a company. And when you start seeing that there are so many of these companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, and all of them are so dominating that you start to wonder that a lot of the people are simply going to fall behind. And there's just no way they can ever catch up, because the world is moving so fast that if you miss the boat, there isn't another boat coming that you can get on that quickly. And one of the things I always see all these companies like even Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, and they all want to be in the field of education. But I think they need to understand that education is one of those things we need to be. It's not like education early, it's education all the time now, right? And that's something that we're doing. We're educating ourselves. Like, I don't know how many people are doing this type of analysis that you and I are doing right now with what just Larry Page said in the speech. What this means is that the way, and this is kind of outside the scope, but it's kind of tied to the technology, that we need to kind of constantly improve our skill set. And companies no longer are doing that. In the past, they used to give you a lot of time to take courses and educate yourself, and at some point make contribution. There was a different agreement between an employer and employer. That is all broken down now. Exception with Google. So Google is an exception. So when you look at Google and saying this is how the world should be, this is how the companies are, that's what Google does. The rest of the companies are not doing that. They can't, and they won't, because that's not how they work. They think in a different way. So when you look at Google, you're looking in the ideal world of what a corporation should be, but that's not the reality outside Google world and Facebook world and some of these other companies, right? And one of the things that is that today, I think people need to spend more time learning than doing, because there's so much new stuff out there that you have to learn in order to do. But the corporations are not doing that. In fact, there was an article that I read in the Harvard Business Review just recently about how to bring creativity in workplace, in companies. And that's hard, because I think I even did a speech on this, creativity versus productivity. And companies are designed to be productive, not creative. Creative is very hard to measure, and you don't even know if companies, they all pay lip service to creativity. But part of creativity is that you're going to have to fail a lot. And how many times are companies are going to give you that opportunity to fail a lot, to learn different things, to just come into the office and just go on the internet and look at Twitter feeds and try to come up with something? That's not how companies will measure you. If they see you doing that and saying, hey, today I went on this site, I went to this site, I went to this site, they're going to fire you and saying, hey, listen, you got to do your work. You're not here to do. And that's what creativity is. That creativity is not something that there is a science behind creativity. Creativity could come from anywhere. Like I just said, I went to this talk at my son's awards show, night on Wednesday, and suddenly I came up with several ideas there. That's creativity. Creativity is not something you can confine to a set time frame. Like, okay, you got to come. Creativity only happens between 9 to 5, and it's a problem that technology is bringing now. That how much work can you do and how much learning you have to do. And I'm not sure companies have even addressed that we are in a kind of that. And let's face it, learning is not easy, okay? And this is another thing that a lot of these people don't quite understand. I mean, you like to learn because you're curious. I'm like that too. I'm curious. I like to learn. But I know so many people out there, they're just happy collecting paycheck every month or every week. And they don't want to learn anything, because why should they? They look at their life as like, well, I'm making a decent living. Why do I need to learn anything? And at some point, those type of jobs are going to disappear. It's just a matter of time. And the question is, then they're going to all say, oh, the economy stinks. Oh, what is this doing? And a lot of it is that individual responsibility in learning it. I'm not seeing people out there taking learning that seriously, and companies obviously are not, because they're in the mode of productivity. That's how they measure. So it's a difficult problem, and the technology is getting faster and faster and advancing so rapidly that how much can you learn at some point? And at what point you get to the saturation point where people just say, I've had enough of this, I just can't take it anymore. So anyway, that's something that Google and all these companies they're addressing it, but I'm not sure they have a solution to any of this yet.
Well, interesting. I think I took a class in global trends from Coursera, and this whole idea of this whole worldwide trend thing is it's the individualism, the mythos, the shifting of the responsibility to individuals, and yeah, maybe we can do a speech on individualism, accountabilities, what that means. And also, I think that some of the accountability have to shift back into organizations or governments, because the whole 90-10 phenomena is this myth that individuals can bootstrap themselves. I think that individuals need to see the reality of things, but on the other hand, part of the group conscience or the community of activism is to hold our service organizations and even for-profit organizations accountable for what they can deliver to support our knowledge, our learning process.
There's a thing that I used to say. I don't know exactly how I said it. I have to look it up. But you've heard of this thing called paradox of choices, right? That when you have a lot of choices, you tend to not make good choice because your brain gets overloaded with too much information, right? And I think the same thing is happening. So one time I was thinking about something, and I looked at the situation in Afghanistan, specifically with Taliban. and the situation here in America. And I came up with this thing, and I said, when you start to think of it, we're not that different in one ways. The Taliban are not getting smarter because they don't have access to information. But in a similar sense, we're also in a similarly, we have too much information. So that means that we can't get smarter either, because there's just too much. And at that point, you just say, screw it, I just don't want to know anything more. And the result is the same. You got two people that are going to be constantly fighting with each other because they're not growing, they're not getting smarter. One has lack of information and the other one has too much information. So what is the right balance there? And that's kind of what's happening. Like, all these Google and all these sites are great, but people get a lot of information, but I'm not sure how that makes you any smarter unless you're willing to sit down and do what you and I are doing, able to talk to each other and reason it out. Let's face it, we can't even get more than one person on this show. And this is the kind of thinking that you need in order to grow, intellectually, spiritually, and all that. And people just have too much information that they just can't grow anymore. I just wanted to get your thought on that, because there's some spiritual aspect to that too. You're muted.
Yeah, at the end, there is a spiritual aspect, but the truth of the matter is, I think, in this modern environment, the systems that we created has to support us, whether it's government or companies. It's not, we have to have a humanistic approach. We cannot be based on the pure capitalism, out for maximum benefits without any sense of morality or community. The world is a system, and ecology itself is a system, and so we have to respect the larger. We have to respect the larger system, and honor the interrelationships, the synergy, and the dynamism of that.
Okay, Julie. Yeah, we could discuss this for another half hour or even longer, so we'll carry on next time. But I thought all these three talks were good. I learned a lot, and I appreciate your input and contribution. So again, let me thank you for joining this show and adding your insight and your opinion on all these things. So again, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. And next week we're going to look at the female billionaires.
Okay, thanks so much, Jay.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.